is up, everybody? Welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at issues on games on a secret console and how to fix them. So let's get started. Now before we begin, don't forget to drop a like, subscribe to my channel so I can keep on bringing content for you guys like this. I know that a lot of you guys are having issues running certain games on your Retroid Pocket 5 from the secret console, and the problem is that unfortunately the emulation for that is not like a one glove fits all. Like for example in PSP, you can just run the game, any game, and it just works fine for the most part. There's rarely any issues. But we're not getting into PSP stuff. We're talking about the secret console running on a Retroid Pocket 5. Like I said, there is not like a one glove fits all. So every game needs to have its own config depending on the game. Some things need to be disabled, some things need to be enabled, and sometimes it's a hassle. So here are my tips on how to make games from the secret console run on your Retroid Pocket 5, and not just on your Retroid Pocket 5. On a lot of Android devices, these tips actually work the same, because at the end of the day it's the same OS running on here as an Android phone. So I'm going to revisit some of my configs that will help me run most of the games on here. There are obviously games that are really demanding and no matter what you change are going to work. For example, The Witcher 3 or Red Dead Redemption, Dying Light. Those are examples of games that no matter what configs you change, there's just issues with them. Either they run too slow, or there's problem with shaders, or there's problem with textures, or just due to the fact that the games are just too demanding and it's just hard to emulate them overall. So what I'm going to be doing in this video is just go over some examples. Again, this doesn't necessarily mean that it's for this specific game. These are just settings that I have found that work for the most part on majority of games that I have tested. As you can see in some of my previous videos, I have shown how to run certain games on your Retroid Pocket 5 from the secret console that we shall not name. I'm gonna go to some of the configs and I'm gonna talk about how to fix some of these problems. So right here I'm showcasing ayaneo Mutation, and the reason I'm showcasing this game is because even though this game runs well for the most part, there is something really funny that happens with this game. I'm just going to run it, I'm gonna talk about this, and I'm gonna show you guys what I'm talking about. I'm running this game with a stock driver. I haven't changed any of the settings other than what I already have shown in a previous video on how to get this game working here. Now as you can see, this game boots up to the main menu and you can see the 3D assets, you see the main menu, you see the game just loaded, right? But let me show you something. When you click on this game to start, you're going to eventually notice how the FPS right here is gonna get to 0. You see that? The FPS go to 0, the game gets stuck. But if you swipe up, look at the progress bar on the game. It's moving forward. You keep on swiping up, the game gets to 0 and then it moves forward. Once we're in the game, the FPS drops back down to 0, but you can hear the music. You go back to the up drawer and then you see that the FPS of the game is 42 frames per second. But then we move back into the game and then it goes back to 0. So this happens with quite a few games. If you go to the settings here and you go to system, you gotta disable limit speed. When you disable this and go back to the game is running just fine. Look at this. As I had shown you guys, this game was running at 0 FPS, and somehow when we swipe up to the app drawer, the game FPS gets better. So disabling the speed limiter actually helps this game to run better. As you can see, like I have not really any issues with FPS anymore. That was a little bit of stuttering, but it's not really that big of a deal. Look, we're just playing the game just fine. And this is not the only game that this also works. For example, I saw somebody that had a problem running the game Ori and the Will of the Wisp, and that game was having the exact same issue. The game will like slow down and it will freeze. You will swipe up in the up drawer and all of a sudden the game was working fine. So disabling the limit speed setting will allow you to run the games better. And just like this, there are so many other games that setting will allow you to run the games when you're having issue with the FPS. Now this is not a solution that will work for all the games, because like I said, it's not the one glove fits all. Another game that I've also had some issues running on here that I just recently posted one video talking about how to get this game running is Signalist. And unfortunately for Signalist, that actually doesn't work. I just found out that there is actually a problem when you're running the game using the turnip driver. However, there is no problem using the turnip driver getting past that point. In one of my previous videos, and it will be linked down below on my settings for Signalist, this game you need to disable the disk shader cache because that was causing issues and it was just making the game crash right away. You will get out of your pod and the game will crash. Forcing the maximum clock clocks will allow the game to perform at a better speed, and the forced maximum clocks enabled and also with the limit speed disabled will also allow a lot of games to run. However, the problem with that is it's definitely going to make the games run better, but at the cost of your battery. If you do care about your battery life, these settings may not be the best option for you, but also some games will not run without these settings. Now for Signalis, I also found out something recent. In dock mode runs really great, but that is not the problem, and the reason why I wanted to mention Signalis is because, for example, in the video that I have for Signalis, you can see that we actually got past the issue where the game was crashing when you got out of the cryopod. But unfortunately, after you try to complete the puzzle where you're inside the spacecraft, and once you try to get out of the spacecraft, you're going to see a cutscene, and once you finish this cutscene, you're basically like outdoors and you're gonna move forward towards like a rock or like a gate, and during that part, using the mesa driver that I recommended on my video causes the game to crash every single time. In order to get past some issues like that, you will have to switch back to the system GPU driver, and on top of that, you will have to disable some of the updates, redo that whole first part in the very beginning that I was showcasing during my video, and it actually allowed me to continue the game. It did not crash once I reached that part. Once I was past that part, I got into a new area where I was able to save the game, and then I was able to continue. Now right now you can see that here in Signalis I have the mesa turnip driver. I'm going to switch it back to the system GPU driver. I'm going to be leaving the 1.4 update enabled, and I'm going to run the game, and the game is going to work with the stock driver. We just boot up into the main menu. I'm actually going to load my save file. I'm in a way deeper area in the game. I've actually been playing this for a little bit, so I just want to showcase to you guys that I was able to get past that. And what I mean by this is sometimes you had to switch between drivers in order to get this working. Sometimes you had to enable or disable updates in order to get certain games working. For example, for Persona 5 Royal, there's a problem with one of the fights early on in the game where the FPS will just drop to 0. Now I haven't gotten that part in Persona 5 Royal. I got it to boot up on here working with the stock driver and with the mesa turnip driver. However, it is possible that if the FPS is dropping to 0, you may need to force the maximum clocks and you may need to disable the speed limit. Like I mentioned, these settings are not one size fits all, unfortunately, and that is the biggest issue right now with the secret console emulation. Going back to Signalis, this is a part that you guys have not seen before. I'm already a little bit deeper in the game. This is the second save point right here, and as you can see, I'm currently running Signalis with the stock driver and it's working just fine. You see right here, the FPS dropped to 0. When I move this up, it improved my FPS and allowed me the game to continue forward. However, with the limit speed on Signalis, sometimes it doesn't fully work. We can change the settings here. We're going to disable the limit speed, and you're going to see the Signalis starts running bad. Now the FPS is at 0. That's why I mentioned that the speed limiter doesn't work for all the games. We're limiting the speed on Signalis, but unfortunately the game is back to 0 and now the screen is black. Swiping up in the up drawer allows us to bring back the game, and now you can see the game running at 30 FPS again. This is an example of a game that does not like the speed limit disabled, so you have to keep it enabled on here. Even though disabling the speed limit setting will allow you to get past a lot of areas in a lot of other games, for some games they don't like that, so you have to tweak around other settings in order to fix that. Or for example, like I mentioned in here, Signalis, this game was really complicated to get past the first part of the game. Once I got past that part, everything seems to be working well. It's just that area that kind of crashes, and you had to disable the update. You had to switch back to the stock driver. Once you get to a checkpoint, you can save, you can enable back the updates, and you can continue with the game with the mesa driver or with the stock driver, and then you can check the performance of the game and you can see which driver performs better. It's just a matter of testing things out. That's exactly why I wanted to mention this. Now I'm gonna be talking about one more game that has given me issues, and this one had also other settings that needed to be updated and changed in order for me to be able to get past certain parts. Dragon's Dogma was a game that was giving me issues, not necessarily with the performance, but on certain parts of the game, especially when you were looking directly at the sunlight. And I am not sure why this happened. It also happened on the native resolution of the game. You go to the graphics setting, you disable the disk shader cache, you enable the force maximum clocks, and you also enable the use asynchronous shaders. Also, one thing that Dragon's Dogma really benefits is just like annotation aim. If you disable the speed limit setting, it will definitely run better. There is also one thing about Dragon's Dogma that I truly like, and that is the fact that for the settings for Dragon's Dogma under graphics, I'm already in game so I cannot change this, but for the resolution, you're able to change the resolution to 2x and the game is going to perform just fine. But the problem is when you look directly at the sun, the game is going to crash. Every single time it will crash. It was really hard to get past certain battles. So for this game, in order to perform better at a really good handheld resolution, you can just enable dock mode. That way you can run the game at 1080p and the game still performs well. Not all settings will work for all games. Each game will have its own setting, and if you're running these games from a front end like ESDE like I do, you need to configure the settings beforehand. That way the game is good to go, so you don't have to adjust anything. Now another thing I wanted to mention is Dragon's Dogma doesn't work well with the emulator that starts with the letter S, and the problem with that is that there is no sound. I can use the driver, the same driver that I'm using here, but it doesn't have sound. Same configuration, same settings, but it doesn't work. There's no sound. Right now I'm running Dragon's Dogma on the emulator that starts with the letter Y, and that one works well. I can hear the sound, everything works just fine. Another game that has issues that I wanted to mention is Wise 10 Nordics. Now, like I mentioned in a previous video, Wise Nordics has no sound. I was able to run this game with sound, but only the background music on the emulator that starts with the letter S, but I had to use an older version of the emulator in order for the background music to work. If you use the latest version of the emulator, the sounds don't work, not even the background music. However, by using the Mesa Turnip driver 25.00 revision 5, you can actually hear the background music. There are slight graphical glitches there that do not happen on the revision 9v2. So here's what you need to decide. Do you want to run a game with no sound, or you want to run a game with slight graphical issues but at the very least has background music? Another game that I wanted to mention that has had some issues for me with the audio was Fatal Frame, Maiden of the Blackwater. This game had like a crackling sound. In order to fix that, you had to go to the settings, and here you had to change the output engine to QBEB. So these are some of the settings that I use in order to get games running from the secret console on my Retroid Pocket 5, but they also apply to any other Android handhelds. I hope that this video really helps you in fixing a lot of the problems that you guys encounter with these games. If you guys have any questions, any comments, don't forget to drop them down below. And just a reminder, it's not a one glove fits all, unfortunately. So you just have to play around and tweak with the settings. You also have to keep in mind that there are some games that they are just too demanding from the console and they just won't run. So that is all for this video. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to drop a like, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys next time.